Something that can be really helpful when you are planning your budgeting in your life, if you get to a point where you've gone ahead, you've already set up a budget, you've gotten your debt payments either finished or you're well into them, you've set up some sort of emergency fund, and you're trying to create some sort of investing and savings for yourself. If you've already done the quote unquote good things to do with your budgeting, the next thing after that, I would say that's an important thing to think about is it's not just that you can beat inflation by investing into, a retirement account or something like that, but you can also help mitigate the damage of inflation by having a high yield savings account. I say that carefully. I am not sponsored by anybody, and I am saying this based on my own beliefs and experience. High yield savings accounts make sure that what you're going with is insured and is a really stable bank. Some of the banks that are online are not that trustworthy, but there are some that are. You will find that high yield savings accounts are not as common of a thing with the big name banks that have lots of locations. They already have so much money to loan that they really don't have an incentive for offering high yield savings accounts in the same way that some of the more online based banks do. But that doesn't negate that you still need to make sure that the bank you're going for a high yield savings account with is a decent bank and decently insured. So a couple of them that I can say are semi-okay without being a financial advisor, just someone who works in a financial field but is not a financial advisor. One that I have personally used before is Ally, and Ally Bank was fine. There was nothing like extremely amazing about it, but it also wasn't bad. So Ally, you can get a high yield savings account with. SoFi, I have never personally used, but I've heard other people who've used them be fine with it. And SoFi is another one of those banks where it's mostly online and everything, but it is insured. It is actually, your money up to a certain point is protected. One that I have heard very good things about is Marcus, and Marcus is through Goldman Sachs, and it is a high yield savings account that not only is decently, well paying in its rate, but also you can refer other people and refer so many people a year, and then you get a 1% increase to your rate per person that you refer. So if you have a lot of friends and you are a convincing or charismatic person, you might want to go with Marcus, just because if you do a little bit of legwork, you can actually increase how much you're getting back from that high yield savings account. And then the last one I'll go ahead and say is if you have a Capital One card, you are eligible to use their systems for banking, and they do have a high yield savings account. Capital One is a really well-known name and all of that, and has a decent credit card. I wouldn't say it's my number one for credit cards, but it is decent. Do not get scammed by Credit One. There is a company that tries to pretend that they're Capital One. Credit One is not the same thing as Capital One. But Capital One does have a high yield savings account that you can take advantage of and go ahead and use. If you've already been using Capital One anyway, might as well just use them. The point is, you can't just unfortunately walk into Chase and say, hey, give me your high yield savings account and get as good of rates. But there are options, and if you can overcome the hurdle of all of my banking has to be at the same bank, and instead realize that multiple accounts is just sort of a normal thing in this modern age, it can actually benefit you, because a high yield savings account is going to give you a way better interest rate where you can actually mitigate the damage of inflation while saving up money. And having your savings not all sitting in just a checking account or in a basic savings account where you're only going to get pennies on it a year is a very helpful thing to you. It's basically like helping you conquer inflation. Free money, passive income, however you want to call it. High yield savings accounts can be super beneficial.